Hey, welcome to Lab the Podcast. So glad to be back with V3 artist and poet Wendy Kieffer and a good friend, part of our team. And these are like my favorite podcast days because we get to have good conversation and like deliberately slow down and put poetry back in front of us.
Yeah.
And something really beautiful always happens. I'm always amazed. And we hear that from people who listen to these episodes, that the poetry episodes, there's always something surprising, I think, that comes out of them. You start listening and you're like, I went in thinking this would be what I got out of that. And then something else happens. So how are you?
I'm good. I'm
Yeah?
good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's summer in Florida. So it's 20 million degrees,
Yeah.
which is only 10 degrees different than winter in Florida, but it does feel super hot.
Yeah.
The kids are out, travel's happening. You went up and you were at a river. Is summer for you an easier season to create and to write, or does it get harder because of all the things that are different during the summer?
Yeah. My writing seasons don't typically follow the seasons as far as being productive or less productive. It really has to do a lot with, I think, my headspace, where I'm at and things like that, like different seasons of my life as opposed to the seasons of the world. So yeah, I think I just write when in whatever season. Yeah.
That's it. Do you read differently in the summer? Like, are you intentional at taking on certain poems or authors or poets in the summertime?
I read differently when I travel.
Okay.
There's something about taking the book with you or finding the book when you get there. You are tuned into it in a different way.
Yes.
So, and then you really lock in. It's laser because you're out of your normal routine.
Yep.
And you found that book maybe at the Strand bookstore that's right outside of Central Park, and you grabbed it. It called to you. You read it on the plane, and now you're just a little more tuned in, I think, when your environment is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I love that. That would be a fun thing. I would love to hear from people listening what your summer read is and what you've chosen. Cause I feel like I do that. Like if I know I have a trip coming up, I'll pick a book that I want to take with me as a little companion for that particular trip. And and you're open to it.
You're or when you go, like went to an Airbnb and they had a bunch of books there and I brought books to read, but I ended up pulling one from the shelf and reading something I would have never chosen.
Yeah.
I like that too.
Yeah. That's fun.
Yeah.
It's whether it's poetry or whatever you're reading, whatever literary form you enjoy, I think do it. Summer's a great invitation to read, right?
Agreed.
And even it's hard to see a screen outside. So if you're going to sit by a pool, like it's easier to read a book than to read a book mediated by a screen. And somebody will debate me on that with the new technology, but I say try out the old stuff, the books. It's
Agreed.
good.
Agreed.
We are always trying to drip in education and like part of this adventure. I think that there are people who have listened to enough of these poetry conversations now that they are conversant, at least like in style and in, why poetry matters, poetry and scripture, all of these different things. You always send a few poems and we kind of go back and forth on which poem. The poem that you chose or that we kind of landed on today is beautiful, but it's a bit different.
Yeah.
How would you describe this poem and this poet?
Okay.
To somebody maybe who isn't in the poetry world.
Right.
And maybe they've heard the name of the poet. He's a pretty famous poet, but they don't know anything about the style and the poet. How would you describe the poem and the poet?
Well, this is Tears, Idle Tears by Alfred Lord Tennyson, and he is from the Romantic period. So we're talking about early 19th century to late 19th century, the Victorian era. So it is a little departure. Typically, we'll do things that are more contemporary, our current poet laureate or something like that. And I think, but I think the Romantic period of poetry is a significant period. And it aligns with a lot of the things we talk about at V3, imagination and emotion and connection to nature and to each other and all of the things that we kind of, I feel like, simmer in that we are trying to reclaim almost. And so he was just a very, very popular, well-known poet of that particular period in time.
Yeah.
So I think we're going back in time. And so it'll feel a little different. It'll sound a little bit, older, more vintage, but it is classic for a reason. One thing I love about Tennyson is his musicality and his play with like repetition. And he'll build that spell around you just because of the repetition and the lyricism. And this particular poem that we chose, Tears, Idle Tears, is an excerpt from a longer narrative poem. And this is the part that is the song. So I actually saw a YouTube video where someone had set it to music. And I think that's a really sweet compliment to a poet when their poetry can be set to music. Yeah. There's a lyricality intrinsic in it that you can very easily then just let the music take it. So I think because of that, that's why he was so beloved. He was called the poet of the people. The poet, people loved him. He was very popular. I mean, the idea that his poetry would fly off the shelf, that he sold so many copies, that the Queen loved him. He was the poet laureate of England. I mean, he kind of had critical success and popular success and political success. Kind of a unicorn.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's great. That's it. I think one of the things that's interesting too is you have all that success, all that acclaim, widely read. If you were to happen upon Tennyson at Mad Dogs or at, Lamb and Flag or McMiniman's if you're in Oregon, one of these pubs, a good like pub that you're going to sit down in, you were like, I think that's Tennyson over there. If you sat down and somebody had 10, 15 minutes later in his story, right? Would he be sad? Would he be hopeful? Would he be wise and patient? How do you think, what might someone discover? And just use your imagination. I don't know. It may not be somebody. AI makes up stuff wildly broad compared to this. So you're an informed reader of poetry. How might you describe him if you were to sit down without all the acclaim and all the accolades, but just meet the person?
Yeah. I mean, he certainly seems like a man of depth and wisdom and yet melancholy. A lot of his poems are dealing with sadness.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that he would be carrying some of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you feel the world very deeply, it ends up creating just a little more of a reservoir for that, emotion to live. Yeah.
I think that's right. I think like wisdom, sorrow, Jesus was a man of sorrows.
Right.
Like if you're awake, if you're paying attention and you see, like we described the commingled way of seeing reality, like so much good and we can't lose sight of it. There's lots to celebrate. And next to that is deep, deep, deep brokenness.
That's right.
And whether it's wars or rumors of wars or sickness or just even, we just wrapped up a podcast with the wonderful organization Created, who is working to care for survivors of human trafficking. And just the scope of the 10,300 some cases identified every year in just Florida, and only 90 some beds available to care for those people who need. I mean, you can't be aware of things like that and then walk down the street and know what's true in your life, your neighbor's life, and not have that. And I think some of these poets are more comfortable with that portion of life, right? And it can coexist with the joy and the beauty and the good, but they've made room for the sorrow stuff.
Right.
And that's part of maybe what makes them wise and
and maybe a little crazy.
Yeah, a little bit.
Maybe a little.
Yeah. There's that too.
I mean, there might be a little madness in there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into this because I think on the backside, I don't know where you're at. I know we talk and life is just complex. I think we came out of COVID and we came into a world that had been reshaped, a lot of us, and people not at work, people trying to come back to work, economic stuff, all of that. And then it was like right into political disruption, right into lots of life. And it's amazing, but we aged too. Like that happened.
Yeah.
Can you think, 2020 was 5 years ago. A half a decade ago, we were standing on our porches, not talking to each other. And that was 5 years ago. And you think about all the things that have happened globally, personally, politically. So we're in this moment. And even if we're just busy, I mean, graduations, celebrations, summer trips, all that's happening. Yes, to all of that. And there's that part of us that maybe feels something. And I think that's where you discover a poem like this and you go, it's okay for me to give some voice to that. So I think this poem will help us do that.
That's great. Yeah, so I can just start reading and then we can dive in. Again, this is a poem that, is a song of lament. It's a song of lament. So we have our poems that lift us up and that are joyful and exuberant, and then we have these poems that give voice and language to this more sorrowful sides of life and letting go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's called Tears, Idle Tears. Tears, idle tears. I know not what they mean. Tears from the depth of some divine despair rise in the heart and gather to the eyes, in looking on the happy autumn fields and thinking of the days that are no more. Fresh as the first beam glittering on a sail that brings our friends up from the underworld, sad as the last which reddens over one that sinks with all we love below the verge. So sad, so fresh, the days that are no more. Ah, sad and strange as in dark summer dawns the earliest pipe of half-awakened birds to dying ears, when unto dying eyes the casement slowly grows a glimmering square. So sad, so strange, the days that are no more.
Mm.
Dear as remembered kisses after death, and sweet as those by hopeless fancy feigned on lips that are for others, deep as love, deep as first love, and wild with all regret. Oh, death in life, the days that are no more.
When you sent this to me,
Yeah.
the question in the email was with other poems, like
Yeah.
which one speaks. This
Mm-hmm.
was like I had to stop again, as I often do, and just lean back because I have felt like that in so
Yeah.
many moments where there's tears welling up. I love what he says: tears from the depth of some divine despair
Yeah.
rise from the heart and gather
And
to the
gather to the
eyes.
eyes.
And I've felt like that so many times
Yeah.
where I just find myself standing and the tears are like starting to
Yeah.
gather and
You don't
yeah.
even know why. It's sort
Yeah.
of it's an indescribable at the start of the poem. It's not clear. You have a sadness that comes before your thoughts have understood it.
Yep.
Right? And it's
Yep.
like they gather to the eyes and he's looking on something happy, happy autumn fields
Mm.
and thinking of the days that are no more. And I love that he has happy autumn. That just leaped right out at me because, spring and summertime are gone. And autumn is a season of transition. It's a season that harkens of something cold and desolate, winter. But also, I immediately remembered this John Keats poem that's about the four seasons of life.
Mm.
That your early childhood is spring,
Mm.
and your early adulthood is summer, and
Yeah.
your middle age is autumn,
Huh.
and your old age is winter.
Wow.
And so I kept thinking like, wow, he's looking on the happy autumn fields. I felt like this is a very charged word, transition, something you have to let go of. There's a beauty to it, but it's haunting beauty.
Mm.
And it's hearkening to something that's coming.
Mm.
And he's thinking of the days that are no more. Again, these are his days that have gone by, right? The days that are no more, his past. But every time this line repeats at the end of each stanza, it deepens in its meaning, kind of broadens its meaning. So the second stanza, it says, fresh as the first beam glittering on a sail that brings our friends up from the underworld. So just like that little bit of light that glitters on a sail of a boat in the distance, he's saying fresh as that brings our friends up from the underworld, like this Virgil's
Mm. Mhm.
writing of the underworld and the boat that carries people to Hades. He said, fresh as that beam that's glittering, and it's sad as the last beam, which reddens over one that sinks with all we love. So this is going back over the edge, back down, sinks with all we love below the verge, below the horizon. So sad, so fresh, the days that are no more.
Mm.
And so here I feel like we're talking about our people we've lost, our friends, people that have been here that they come up as a flash, but then now they're gone again into
Mhm.
our memory that sinks below. And he's saying, these days that are no more, their days are over. Their presence is fresh, in the mind, but those days of those people are no more.
Mm.
And that recognition, it's not just my past, the days of my past that are no more. I'm recollecting these other people, their days are no more as well.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, there's a loneliness, I think, if you think about midlife as autumn or whatever moment that these kind of things happen, and you start to look back and you go, that's not what was is not what is.
Right.
And for all the reasons and all the seasons, what was is not what is.
Yeah.
And that it catches you off guard sometimes. I think and that's where those tears again start to gather, and you don't know how to make sense of them.
Right.
But if you give it enough time, you're like, well, maybe I'm missing people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And something's changed with people.
Right.
And
I think that's very good. And I think there is, you're right, like a loneliness. Those people are missed. Or maybe, typically when we are dealing with loss or pain or failure, we were talking about these things earlier, that it involves people. These are the people that we're losing or we perceiving to be losing. Things are changing, there's transition. And a lot of that affects us in ways that are just below the conscious level.
Yep.
That these tears are springing up because we're having to let go. We're at the end of a season, or we're being faced with a lot of change, a lot of loss. It's hard.
Yeah,
you carry
hard.
it with you.
Yeah.
And so he's saying here too, now in the third stanza, I feel like he's deepening this, the refrain with it's the days that are no more. He's deepening it, and he's saying sad and strange. So no longer are they sad and fresh. Now we are sad and strange. As in, dark summer dawns, the earliest pipe of half-awakened birds to dying ears. So now he's imagining someone dying. Again, this is this, people are no more. My days are no more. These people are no more. There's someone, and it will be me one day, that is dying. And what would a bird song sound like to ears that are getting ready to leave, to ears that are dying? They're sad and strange, as in dark summer dawns. Dawns aren't dark, but it would probably have a darkness or a sadness to it, even the sounds of birds singing. He's saying, when unto dying eyes, the casement, which is the window, when unto dying eyes, the casement slowly grows a glimmering square. So sad, so strange, the days that are no more. I'm sure the person who is dying, looking at the window glowing with a new dawn, a new bright day, and hearing the birdsong and knowing this is so strange. The days of myself that are going to be no more, or this day is going on without me. This day is bright and hopeful and full of purpose and full of passion, and I'm leaving. Right? And it's going to go on without me. How strange and sad would that be? And so he keeps deepening this, days that are no more. And then the last stanza, he's saying these are tears and these days are dear as remembered kisses after death. So you're remembering the kiss of a loved one after they've gone. And the tears are sweet as those by hopeless fancy feigned on lips that are for others. So fancy is just like your desire, and feigned is like pretended. So they're sweet as like your pretend kisses that you had for some other that you were never able to realize. So that's a kind of like a regret, or I wish I had gone after that person, or I wish I had known that love, because now here I am, right? I'm remembering what I never had, not just what I lost, but a lost potential chance of something. So sweet as those by hopeless fancy feigned on lips that are for others. Deep as love. So now we're going into a wild string of adjectives here. Deep as love, deep as first love, and wild with all regret. Oh, death in life, the days that are no more. And so he's saying we have these remembered kisses from people. We have kisses that never happened. We had first love kisses. We had all of this regret. And he's saying we have to carry that. That's the death that we carry in our life.
Yeah.
So not just death that's coming, not death that we maybe experienced with friends, but there are so many small deaths that we then carry through life. Oh, death in life. the days that are no more, that will never be.
Mm.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy Kieffer, and I am honored and overjoyed to share with you my debut poetry collection, Alchemy of Praise. I chose the word alchemy for the title because it represents transformation, and especially the kind that is magnificent or mysterious and even inexplicable. Also, alchemy represents the kind of change that is possible through poetry, taking beauty from ashes and the way it lives inside of us, transforming the way we see or perceive our world. And you'll find in this collection a variety of themes, poems on wonder and stillness, poems that exalt God and lift our eyes up, and also poems that explore the interior spaces of the soul. All of these I offer to you with love and deep gratitude. You can find your copy on Amazon. And here's to allowing poetry to do as Jana Joya said, to awaken, amplify, and refine our sense of being alive. Thanks again.
It's amazing to think, like, again, weeks ago, I think we said, or maybe months ago, we said that the Pope gave a speech and said that we're in danger of losing the interiority of life in modernity and late modernity, that the interiority of our lives as humans is what is most at risk of being lost.
Right.
And I think when you read a poem like this, or you hear a poem, you did a beautiful job taking us through this poem. I hope probably is true for people listening. Like, I never thought of it like that, but I bet you felt that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that we're not as accustomed to the interiority of our lives.
That's true.
And we're certainly not accustomed to those strange and sad parts of the interiority of our lives, but that doesn't mean they're not there.
Right.
And it takes a good poet to read or write something like this. And we go, yeah, I've felt like that.
Yep.
I've felt like that. And I hope that's true. If you're listening, that one thing when you sent this, I thought, I hope that if nothing else, we read this poem, we go through this poem, and people realize, like, it's okay if you've got some interiority that feels a bit like this, and you don't know what to do with it, that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's part of the human. You had said this earlier. This is a very human poem.
Yeah.
And there's something about us as humans that has a capacity to feel these things. And just that, right? We always say Saint Irenaeus, the glory of God is man fully alive.
Yeah.
Well, a full sense of aliveness includes a sense of loss and a sense of tears. Even Jesus wept for the things, the lives that had been lost. That mattered to him.
That's right.
And if we just skip so quickly or keep those things unattended to, right? It's less than who we were made to be.
That's so true. And even as parents, you were talking about your daughter's graduation, and you're moving into a phase where your kids need you less and less and less until finally they fly away. And then you're like, it's a happy loss, but it's still a loss, right? You have a lot of different feelings about like for me, this stage of life is very different than I would have felt when they were younger. Yeah. And we're always adapting and transitioning and changing. And I think sometimes maybe feeling, again, that subtle disturbance underneath that's not always defined because we know we're in a transitional season or that one is coming. Yeah. My dad famously has always said to me, Wendy, life is just a long series of letting go all the way up until the end. And the older I get, I know what he means. Yeah. And yet, this is where the power of faith, what, Jesus came to say, death, where is your sting? Like, it is finished. There is victory and power and hope. I think sometimes that we have to recognize the cavern of despair that is there before we can really have that hope just pouring into that place, before we can really understand the beauty of what we believe and why it matters so much. And, like you said, even Jesus, a man of sorrows, one who wept over the death of his friend, one who felt all that pain and sadness probably so viscerally. It doesn't remove the pain and suffering and loss.
Yeah.
But it certainly gives, now your past is also colored with your future hope.
Yeah.
So they kind of, I think it helps to balance out what we have to carry.
Yeah. Well, and how meaningful, like if you hear these words and they're beautiful and they're true and you go, yes, if that's the case, that's why we say life is so meaningful.
Yeah.
It's full of meaning. If it wasn't, we wouldn't resonate so deeply with days gone by, people who have lost, our life's ending. Like if none of it mattered and we weren't made by and for God, and the story wasn't deeply meaningful, then Jesus would not have wept at the death of a friend.
Right.
And he stood there as someone who knew that he was going to do something about it, and he could. Right? Like I have stood in moments where you've lost someone and you go, I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do but weep.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do but weep. Jesus stood there knowing that he can do something about it and he would do something about it. And he still wept. And if that doesn't tell you like, yes, like he is like Christ becoming, God becoming man in Christ is just this powerful affirmation to our humanity that it is, God made us in his image and it is good. And there are cavernous depths of feeling in us that we're going to experience in life. And it is not without hope.
Yes.
Right? And that's where that turn does come. And that's why the poetry of the Psalms is so beautiful, because we don't hold back any of that lament, any of that hurt, any of that, why have you forsaken me? And yet none of it is without that turn of hope.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I love that.
Right. It's like you're always living within 3 times, the past, the present, and the future. You're living all at once. Everything you're processing is sort of being filtered through all 3 of those experiences. Yeah. And there's that famous, I think it's Aristotle had a riddle where he said, the past is not happening because it already happened.
Yep.
The present is just a threshold. It's not real. It's a threshold.
Yep.
And the future hasn't happened yet.
That's right.
So figure it out. None of it's happening. Or it's all connected, right?
Well, it is. And that's why we say all the time, commingled, commingled, commingled.
Yeah.
Good, broken future. All 3, all the time.
Right.
Good, broken future. All 3, all the time.
That's right.
And to live as if, right? That's all true. Again, it's not something to be solved in our head.
Yeah.
It's more of just like, yes, that's why I have tears that come and start to gather in my eyes. And if I'm feeling that, like that's not a sign of you doing something wrong. That's probably really a right thing. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And sometimes the body gets there before the mind, which is why I love how he starts with this. The body is, maybe a certain time of year. Like if you lost a loved one, usually the anniversary of their death can be hard.
Yeah.
And your body might remember, or maybe it remembers what season it was when you lost them. Yeah. And you're like, why am I disturbed? What's wrong with me? Why am I crying? And your body might get there before your mind. Yes. So you're like, there's some kind of unknown sadness welling in me. What is this? Yeah. This kind of grief that's latent or that's deep, and something will release it before your mind gets there.
Yeah. What would you say to the person who is feeling that and is saying, Wendy, what you just said, I'm driving around, shopping, dropping kids off, and I'm feeling this thing that's coming up from below, and I don't know what to do with that next. Like, should I pray? Should I call somebody? Again, there's not one size fits all solution, but what's some encouragement that you could give to somebody if you were a friend? Yeah. And I called you and said, hey, I don't know what to do with this, but I'm noticing more and more that there's this thing rising up from deep within me and even gathering to tears sometimes. And I don't know what to do next.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I'd say is me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not alone.
Yep.
Me too.
Yeah.
Second thing I'd say is, I can say what's helped me is that I have great friends and I'm in conversation and prayer with them. Singing, dancing. I had a dream where I was spinning around and around and around, like I was in a dance studio and I was just spinning this beautiful dance, and I was like, must have spun 20 times, and all this grief was coming out of me. Yeah. And a good friend of mine who's a dance therapist was saying, you're always turning, just like the planets, just like, all things are always in movement and motion. And you're always turning from darkness to light. And just allow yourself that space to be in that place, because it will eventually turn.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so, I'll just say this, that if you're a mom or a dad, mom or dad, right? If you're a mom, a dad, a child, whatever your vocation, like part of what I hope this does is just again an endorsement to humanity and who
Yeah.
God made us to be. And I want you to know you are not alone. Like when you said quickly, like me too. I think that's why we say at
Yeah.
V3 all the time, friendship first.
Yeah.
That's the best thing. Like you're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. And a lot of people do feel alone. And
Yeah.
that's another quiet thing that's happening, I think, is that we're so connected. We're so busy. We're so all the things.
Yeah.
And yet a lot of people feel very much alone. And
Yes.
the door closes in the car and they go, there's 10,000 people who need me, want me, demanding of me.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I feel so alone? Right.
Mm.
And it's, again, these parts of us, we don't have to be afraid of them, but if you're feeling it, you're not alone. And that's why I love poetry. It helps us pay attention to parts of us and parts of our experience that maybe we would rush past.
Yes.
We would underattend to, and we wouldn't be able to talk about.
Right.
And I look at you and I have so much respect for you and Billy, and I see your family, and you're working so hard to be faithful in the things that God's given you. And you have a lot of fun. There's a lot of laughter. There's a lot of dancing. And there's some tears and some loss. And even within the last 24 months, if you go back in your story, 24 months is a lot to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't always hit you with grieving. I mean, in loss, you don't know when it's coming. It doesn't go in a straight line. It's not predictable.
Yeah.
You might be triggered by something. It's been 5 years, or maybe it's been 5 minutes, 5 months. It's not predictable. And I think we want everything kind of like, wait a minute, I need a space to cry, or this is the wrong moment to cry. And we're kind of, it's a little messy.
Yeah.
So that's okay too.
I think that's why I love a poetry podcast too, because we sit here and you go, you're 24 months, my 24 months, Riley's 24 months, and everybody listening. If any of us went back 24 months and we really laid it out and we were honest about what the ground we've traveled in the last 24 months, a good, compassionate person would put an arm around us and say, you've been through a lot. Yeah. And we have it really good. I mean, I'm saying that on all fronts, like, but that can't be a thin veneer to be like, well, you have it so good that other thing doesn't matter or you shouldn't feel it. Because that's not true. You've been through a lot. And if you went back in your story for 24 months, I bet that's true. And on a podcast like this, you go, okay, so what's the solution? Like, what do we do about it? Yeah. You go, I don't know. Maybe you just reflect on it and say, that's true. Yeah. Me too.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's hopefully what things like counseling, therapy, things like that bring up, is that you have a space to be and to be with someone else in the being. Yeah. Yeah. And poetry can do that as well. Put language to the thing you're feeling, somehow helps you feel like you're not alone. Yeah. This is a human thing. You're not alone. Yeah. And everyone you see who just smiles, I see you for an hour. We smile at each other. Everyone looks like they're fine. Yeah. They're not fine.
Yeah. No, no, come on. Yeah.
It's okay to not be okay. Like, I think that's the
Survivors, Paul Murray's poem for Survivors, I bring it up all the time because it's so good. You just have no idea what the person going next to you is going through. Yeah. And again, that doesn't diminish the good. We always say good, broken future. The good is the good. Yeah. Kids are graduating. Right. Family is rich and full and meaningful, and life is good. Good friends, good neighbors, good work, all the things. And last 24 months in any of our stories are hard.
Right. So that's very true. And the older you get, the more accustomed to grief and loss, unfortunately, usually happens the older you get.
Before we read the poem and just let those be the last words, as someone who has a really deep and rich faith, right? These things, if you read the poetry of the Psalms, you're going to encounter feelings like this. And we do have hope. We do have a indestructible hope, right? In Christ. So that is true for us. Yeah. What are you learning as a person of faith that right now in this season of life where these things are commingled and they're all present all the time.
Yeah.
Are there some habits or practices that you are finding are really good for you,
Mm-hmm.
whether the day is filled with good and glad cheer or it's filled with some
Mm-hmm.
unexpected tears gathering up? Like, are there some habits or practices that are true for you that
Mm-hmm.
just help you at a soul level
Mm-hmm.
be in the right condition for joy, for sorrow, for hope?
I think one of the things that brings me the most fulfillment and gets me out of potentially my low points is connection.
Hmm.
Whether that's really connecting with my kids or connecting with friends in person. The other thing is nature and going into the woods. It's so revitalizing for me. I cannot be without it. And when I get back from a trip where I'm surrounded by green and everything's twittering and buzzing with life, and I come back to Tampa, I'm kind of like,
Yeah,
like,
it's hard.
So there's those things that I know are very life-giving for me. Um, but I've also been in a period, first time in my life, where my faith feels different. It feels like it's maybe the sadness or the grieving over my brother is affecting my faith
Hmm.
somehow on some level. I'm not calling it a dark night of the soul or having this, um, feeling where you're full of doubt, but you just feel different.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes those periods are okay. They're
Yeah.
seasons. They will not be forever. But again, spending time with the right people, I think is really, really important. And I feel like that's the thing I long for usually is that we're so busy, but we're not connecting.
Yeah.
We're not sitting by fires and just come over and sit and we're going to laugh and talk for 4 hours. And I feel like my life is very full and the wheels are spinning very fast. And I don't always make time for those life-giving things that are simple human connection.
Yeah.
So I would also say singing. I'm big into somatic therapies,
Sure.
where it's like your body or rather than hitting the thing dead on, like, let's go talk about your past. Like, that's fine. That's good. But I like to let's make a beautiful sound echo through my skull and through the room, or let's kind of hit it from another angle physically with your body and do something beautiful. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Somatic.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
That's so good. I'm reading a great book that the author touches on that just a bit in saying that there was a way that we began to heal or we thought about healing and we really got really good at it and we doubled down on it. But there's a lot of other ways that we heal.
Yes.
And this is a doctor who's done a lot of work with Vietnam vets and people returning from war and how do you heal really, really deep traumas. And he was saying almost verbatim, just that there is value in telling that story and all of those things, walking through it. Yes. And there's so many other ways that we do need to keep healing. And a lot of it involves the body. So
yes.
so good.
I love it.
I hope that just even listening, like Lab the podcast, where we try to go find the life and beauty of the gospel everywhere we can find it and just put a frame around it and say, there it is. Right. And I think a poem like this, sometimes art, right, that has a little bit of a darker tone or a heavier tone, it does fit in the home in a particular way because that's true of our experience. And so while I have really bright art over here and really beautiful art over here, there's also place in our home for those other things that contain and put a frame around the storms and the other seasons. And I think this does this so well. So I love that you sent it my way. I hope it was helpful. And maybe that even people can find the Oregon friends and the Northeast friends and the Northwest friends are going to laugh about the fire because it's normative to life too. When you live in a cold climate, it's easier to go like, oh yeah, every night after work, we're out back behind the fire. Right. So I think climate wise engenders some of that kind of thing as well. But wherever you are, east, west, north, south, I think poetry and the poetry, but this can be our little fire, right?
We'll be around the pool.
That's right.
We'll bring poetry into the pool.
That can be our next podcast. There you go.
Well, I've been reading Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Just for my summer reading.
Yes.
And the amount of poetry that is tucked into that book and the idea that we have a bathing song and a song before we eat and a song that tells of our history.
That just happened.
Lightning and thunder.
Talk about Florida. We are not going to edit this, but our dog was sleeping right there and the thunder just popped off. So
it's summer afternoon showers in Florida.
If you can't see him, you can hear him. His name is Baxter, and he's still getting used to thunder.
Well, anyway, I love the idea that there is a poem for sadness, a poem for lament.
Yeah.
You know, just like there's that poem for before a meal or a poem before bed. Right?
Beautiful. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Well, let's end with this. This is that poem if you were in that season. And let's just let these words from Tennyson create that space.
Sounds good. This is Tears, Idle Tears by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Tears, idle tears, I know not what they mean. Tears from the depth of some divine despair rise in the heart and gather to the eyes, in looking on the happy autumn fields and thinking of the days that are no more. Fresh as the first beam glittering on a sail that brings our friends up from the underworld, sad as the last which reddens over one that sinks with all we love below the verge, so sad, so fresh, the days that are no more. Ah, sad and strange, as in dark summer dawns the earliest pipe of half-awakened birds to dying ears, when unto dying eyes the casement slowly grows a glimmering square, so sad, so strange the days that are no more. Dear as remembered kisses after death, and sweet as those by hopeless fancy feigned on lips that are for others, deep as love, deep as first love, and wild with all regret, O death in life, the days that are no more.